We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling, and productive lives, now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Angel Shannon, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Angel V. Shannon is a personal development keynote speaker, board certified nurse practitioner, and founder of Seva Health and the Seva Institute. Her transformational workshops, seminars, and retreats are drawn from over 3 decades of clinical practice and lifetime study of integrative health and mind-body medicine. Angel specializes in coaching her clients and patients on the importance of managing stress, optimizing sleep, proper movement, and nature immersion for health, physical, and spiritual well-being. Angel has extensive expertise in women's health issues, including hormonal imbalances and perimenopausal and menopausal conditions. Through her coaching, clinical practice, and annual retreats, Angel holds sacred space for midlife women seeking the clarity, courage, and confidence they need to design the life they truly desire and deserve. Welcome, Angel. I'm so happy you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I am thrilled to be here with you today.
So just in getting started, Angel, let me ask you, do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why do you think it is that you don't?
You know, that's such a wonderful question. And I think to begin with, how we define getting older is important. For me, I see getting older as becoming more refined and evolving. Evolving is the word that I tend to use. I'm evolving. I'm continually evolving into a newer version of myself, a greater version of myself, a version of myself that is not just focused on me, but a version that is part of a larger, more important reason for being here on the planet. So yes, I am getting older. I'm evolving. I'm continually growing. And I'll tell you what, that excites me. It excites me to look in the mirror and see myself, see this version of myself compared to who I was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I'm excited by it. So yes, I am getting older. And for me, I'm evolving.
I love that, Angel. I love looking in the mirror and seeing this version of myself. Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful, wonderful way of putting it, because mm-hmm. so often you hear women talk about, or men too, but I work with women. So women talk about, oh, I don't even like to look in the mirror anymore, you know, mm-hmm. and that's really sad because that's who I am, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's not all of who I am, but the outer layer of it is who I am. And so I find that really sad.
It is very sad. it's very, very sad because it's loaded with assumptions that you should be something else.
Right.
Should be, you should be, not have gray hair, or you should not have wrinkles, or you should not, have a few extra pounds or so. It's loaded with that. And I do find that very, very sad.
I do too. And we have to really work at not paying attention to all the messages we get from our society, because
Yes.
we get all those messages constantly about what we should look like, what we should look like.
Constantly. Mm-hmm.
So, Angel, you have a fascinating background. I love everything you've done that's led you to this point. So, how did you first know you wanted to be a nurse practitioner?
I never did.
You never did.
What's funny, never did. No. First and foremost, I always share the story that I grew up in a very holistic household. And when I say holistic, I mean sort of like whole person well-being. My mother had 6 children. My grandparents lived in rural Georgia. Every single summer, we went down to my grandparents. We rode on a bus called Trailways. I don't know if any of your listeners remember Trailways, but that's how we got there. And it was the most amazing experience for me as a child because it was nature immersion. It was being out on their 5, 6 acres of property, fishing with my grandfather, all this kind of thing. And truly, I mean, he built the house that they lived in and the house that my great grandmother lived in. He built it with his own 2 hands. And so that was always that was the way I thought the whole world existed, as a child growing up. And when, we'd get back home, if we had colds or flus or things like that, my mother's very much, she's not a midwife by training, but she's, I've come from a long line of women healers. And so my mother, would, a little bit of Mullen tea if you had a cold, or a little bit of Father John's if you were coughing and such like this. But in my primary school years and middle school years, I wanted to be a lawyer. And in fact, an international corporate lawyer, because I loved research, I loved writing, I wanted to travel. And these were the early days of IBM. IBM was the big thing back then, And so I had this dream of being an international corporate lawyer. I had no plans whatsoever of anything related to healthcare. And through a series of events, not the least of which was a marriage that did not work out. I married way too young, 20. In that process of splitting up, that marriage, one of my best girlfriends said to me, she said, she was in nursing school. She said, I think you would love nursing. And mind you, I had stopped college in the middle of in this marriage because, for whatever reason. And so she said, you would love nursing. And she worked in New York City, trauma and ICU. And when I heard her stories about the trauma unit and the ICU and, life on the hanging by a thread, I was like, wow, that is exciting. And so, just for a number of reasons, not the least of which was that I needed to jumpstart my career and do something because I had not gone on to law school as I thought I was going to do. I got into healthcare with her. And I absolutely found my passion. My passion. I had no plans on being a nurse. And then, once I was working in healthcare for a while and came to realize that, gosh, there are these midwives. There are people who birth babies and they give herbs and they, do all of this kind of good midwifery stuff. That's when I said, gosh, I'm going to go back to school because I think that's what I want to do. I want to be an advanced practice nurse where I can own my own little country clinic somewhere and do all of that kind of thing. So that's the short version of that. But I found my absolute passion, my purpose, my joie de vivre. I mean, there's so much about my work that I just am so grateful for.
Well, and the way you've described it is so much in line with the way you grew up.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, very much so.
So when did you decide that you wanted to concentrate on women's health?
It's interesting. I do believe that um, people find you. Your work finds you. There's a saying that your work makes room for you. And I think I didn't choose focusing on women's health. It chose me because of the messaging that I was bringing to the forefront about burnout and the how difficult it is to carry two things at the same time. There's a treasured book that I love by Anne Morrow Lindbergh, The Gifts of the Sea, in which she talks about the need for time away and women being the spoke of the hub of the wheel, and all of these spokes that go outward from the wheel. How do we carry motherhood and children and careers and all of this? And that book, I'm sure, was written many, many moons ago. And
Oh,
it is,
I read it a long time ago. I loved it. I had totally forgotten about it. I love that you reminded me.
yeah, it's such a work of art, and it's as true then as it is now. It's as true now as it was then when she wrote it. And so I began to, I'm very uh I speak openly about the challenges that women face, and myself being one of those women, and so bringing that to my work, with patients, just the regular patient encounter. If it's a woman saying, your blood pressure is elevated, but let's talk about what you think this may be related to. And then the natural conversation would unfold about, I got to get the kids out of the door at 6 o'clock in the morning. My husband is military. I'm the only one. My dad is sick. And it just grew from there. And you know how women are. If they find a great beautician, they're going to tell a friend. If they find a great physician, they're going to tell a friend. And that's how it developed over the years. It was not intentional to say, I'm only going to work with women. It just unfolded that way. But the same is true with the men, because I had just, when I worked in a different practice, I had just as many male patients come in and say, gosh, you are the first person who has asked me about what kind of work I do, how long I work, how many days I travel a month for this sales position.
I think it's fascinating when you talk about that, because I was thinking the other day about, I have a cardiologist, and she has never asked me what I eat, how much I exercise, how much I sleep. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking about that. Like, I don't think this is okay.
right.
I mean, how can you? Well, I am really glad we have Western medicine. I think it is incredible for acute emergency situations. But other
Absolutely.
than that,
Mhm,
how can you not be interested in a patient's life?
mhm,
And as I say that, I'm haltingly saying that, because as I say that, it's really unfair, because I know for most doctors in most situations, they don't have time.
mhm,
They have, 15, 17 minutes, whatever it is, to
mhm,
see a patient.
mhm,
They don't have
mhm,
time. And so
mhm,
it's not really their fault. But I love what you're saying, and I love how your work has come, right, it has come to you. It has
mhm,
unfolded. It's nothing that you planned. It just unfolded. So
yeah.
as women come to you, what are some of the common questions they ask? Are there similarities in questions that they come to you with?
Absolutely. First and foremost, it's always something that has become, red alert alarm. Blood pressure out of control, an A1 hemoglobin A1C, which is a diabetes indicator, being out of control. Someone has decided, a physician or healthcare provider has said, that's it, you're going on medication. And it's almost always, I don't want to be on this medication. What do I need to do? It's almost, and I believe the genesis of all disease is stress. It is the body being physiologically pushed beyond its limits, beyond its capability. The body's saying, that's it, I can't do this anymore. So the questions usually surround some sort of lifestyle issue run amok, stress run amok, blood pressure, stress run amok, blood sugar out of control, diabetes. Sometimes, and of late, now that I've been talking more about perimenopause and menopause, it's those symptoms that are, how do I get this under control without medication or without medical intervention? It's that kind of thing. There's a huge desire nowadays to do as much as possible with the least amount of medications, surgeries, all that kind of thing. Years ago, it was considered, new age and all this kind of thing. But now people are understanding that there's more in control, there's more within their locus of control than there is not. And they're very intrigued about how to engage with that.
So when you're talking to women and that's what they say, what are some of the things you suggest for women who are experiencing difficult symptoms from perimenopause or menopause rather than a medical intervention?
I am what I call a test, don't guess girl. I always lean into the allopathic science first, which is, let's see what your body is doing. Let's be sure that this is actually perimenopause or menopause and that this is not a thyroid, because as we get older, things are declining, things are changing. So I've seen a lot of thyroid disease that has been masked by other symptoms. And so I like to use my allopathic toolkit to make sure there isn't a thyroid, there isn't some cancer somewhere that's mimicking, because your body's very sophisticated. Symptoms can be mimicked. Women who are saying they're depressed come to find out that their thyroid is just taking a dump, right? So I like to do that first. And once we make sure what the lay of the land is in the body, we do what's called functional medicine testing. Now I want to see how your body's functioning. So then we're talking about like gut health and hormone, imbalances, things like that, nutrient disorders. A lot of this brain fog that women experience is the result of blood sugar dysregulation. When that blood sugar is up and down and up and down, and the cortisol is up and down, that can easily be remedied. So I like to see how the body is functioning overall, and then get down to some root analysis still with blood work. And then I say to women, this didn't happen overnight. You've got to be good to yourself and kind to yourself as you unwind years and years and years worth of behaviors and lifestyle practices that haven't served you. What do I mean by that? Being up until midnight, knowing full well you've got to be back up at 4 a.m. If I don't fix anything else, I like to help women fix their sleep, because there's a lot that goes on in our bodies. Circadian rhythms, hormonal, regulation, neurological things that go on in the brain. That's your brain's cleanup time. So I like to focus on 4 key areas that I called the meds, MEDS, like meds, short for medications: mindfulness, exercise, diet, and sleep. If you can start focusing on those 4 areas consistently, I've seen women dramatically change those symptoms and change their lives ultimately.
That's really interesting, Angel, because there's a huge generalization. As women, we are taught to take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves. Mm. So for a woman to start doing that, really focusing on it, that is not a small task.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It takes a lot of unwinding. And that's not work that's done just in a 15-minute visit or a 30-minute visit. This is when many women who I encounter decide, you know what, Angel, I'm gonna go to this doctor over here just to get some blood work and this, but I want to come to you for coaching. I want coaching with you. I want to spend time with you. I want to go deeper with you, because I know that what we need to do is outside of the realm of a 30. I mean, most my appointments in my clinical practice are 30 minutes. Follow-up appointments, initial appointments are about 45 to 50. But even within that 30 minutes, there's a lot to be covered. So I have the type of women who realize that and say, I've got to make this investment in myself. I don't have a choice anymore. It's just like your car. You can keep riding it and riding, but there comes a time when you've got to trade it in. It's on its last leg. And many of these women have symptoms that are clear red lights that they are really walking on thin ice. And we're talking about blood pressures that are way out of control, stress beyond belief.
Yep.
And so they become coaching clients so that we have the time and space to go deeper.
What about women who are beyond menopause? I mean, there's very little that I have. I talked to a couple of women who wrote a book on after menopause, or I forget exactly the title, but beyond menopause something. But other than that, there's very little talk. I mean, it seems to me, and you may not agree with this, and I'd be interested, but it seems to me that recently it is a bit easier to talk about menopause than it used to be. It seems to me it's a little bit more of an open topic than it used to be. But I don't hear people talking about after menopause.
And you're absolutely right. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think as we look at the demographics, how many people are in the Gen Z, how many people are Gen X, we have a larger population of women who are living longer and are within that era of the talkers. I'm going to give you an example. Oprah Winfrey is one, right? So she's in that, she's the hallmark of that era of talk shows and talking about things and whatnot. So that cross section, if you will, of women who fall within that age bracket are joining her in that conversation. There are a lot of women who are in that bracket. The women who are past that may be not part of that sort of mindset that this is something that we talk about openly. I do think they're having those conversations. And interestingly enough, I've seen several. I recently just got really into Instagram. I wasn't into Instagram for a long time, but I'm seeing on Instagram many, many, many women who openly advertise this and this and this for the 65 plus woman. I just saw a travel group of women who are 65 plus such and such. So it's growing, and you may not see that because remember that group of women aren't necessarily on Instagram or LinkedIn or the internet, but I do know and see them gathering in their own spaces, and having those conversations that may not be as forward leaning or public facing as the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs and those who are just used to doing a whole lot of talking in public spaces.
I love the talkers. That's a wonderful description. So can women in their 60s and 70s, for example, still have hot flashes or night sweats, or can they experience what we think of as symptoms of menopause, or do those all stop with the onset of menopause?
It's tricky to say. No two women are alike. And for some women never have hot flashes at all. Some women, it's the first symptom that they have, and they have it well into their 60s, late 60s, and whatnot. Is it still directly related to menopause? Or again, is it a thyroid issue? Is it a blood sugar dysregulation issue? It's hard to say. I think the only way to really definitively have an answer to that is if their healthcare providers themselves are tracking, when the vasomotor, we call them vasomotor symptoms, when they occur, what they feel like, what else may be going on in the face of those symptoms, and maybe tying that together to say, yeah, that's probably more related to menopause, or no, that very well could be something else that's vasomotor like. Right. So, it's hard to pinpoint and say, make a generalization that yes, women that can occur, because some women absolutely do say that it is. And, how can you argue what any woman is experiencing?
It's always interesting to me when somebody tries to argue against my experience.
Right.
That's my experience. It's like in this shoe store, when the cute young guy says, this is your size, and I say, it's too small. I say, but this is your size. I don't care if it's my size. It's too small.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Angel, what's next for you? What dreams do you have that you haven't realized yet?
I'm writing my book.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
at that, yeah, I'm at that stage now where it's time to write the book. And as an author yourself, you know that the book finds you. So, you can start out with the best intentions and the outline and all that kind of thing, but the narrative is like a winding road. And I'll tell you, I am thoroughly enjoying the creative process, uncovering, like layers of an onion, peeling back these different layers to get to the heart of the story and figuring out which story of my story I want to tell. So that's my first and primary focus for this year, continuing my podcast and then just going deeper with the retreats. I had a wonderful experience last year and the response was just incredible. So the women who I've seemed to that my message resonates for have really nicely responded to the call to go deeper in a private, small, intimate setting. So these retreats are no more than 8 women, 6 to 8. I think 6 to 8 is a comfortable number. And our goal really is to go deeper on much of what you and I have talked about today, and for them to have space to write new chapters,
Right.
in their lives.
So you have done so many things and you're doing so many things.
Thank you.
What are the 2 or 3 things you have done or are doing that you are actually proudest of in terms of what you've been able to do?
Oh, top of the list is raising my 2 children. I mean, they are just phenomenal human beings. They went through all of the typical teenage kinds of things. I needed support in therapy when they were really, when my eldest was really giving me a run for my money. But I've discovered so much about the role of a mother, a parent, the parenting process, and seeing them now as young adults. My eldest is 27, my youngest is 23, seeing them become, they're not mini me's as people call them. They're their own human beings, and watching them grow into who they truly are and watching them evolve is just so delightful for me. It really is delightful. The other thing is traveling, getting out to see the world. I'd love to, just prior to the pandemic, I had the joy of going to Kotor, Montenegro, to Santorini, Greece. So I'm looking forward to more travel, doing more of that. And funny enough, I enrolled in a scuba diving training, because I'd really like to learn more about marine life. And I'm hoping that, I'll have the opportunity to work with children at some point to, do some restoration work, some really important work for the planet. And so that's what I'm excited about in this next chapter of my life.
Oh, that's great. I think we've built a world that's really tough for kids. And I love it when somebody talks about wanting to work with children in one way or another to try to undo some of that damage that I think that we've done.
I agree. Yeah.
So, Angel, this has been absolutely delightful. I can imagine that people are going to want to get in touch with you. How is the best way for them to do that?
You know what? Let's make it easy. I've got 2 websites. Let's direct your listeners to angelvshannon.com. Angelvshannon.com, just my name. And right there on that umbrella website, they can easily see my clinical practice as well as retreats and other offerings that are coming up. And if they'd like to reach out to me to learn more about the clinical practice, use that contact form there. SevaHealthGroup.com is my clinical and coaching website. So either of those two will do the job to get in touch with me and find out what's happening at Seva Health and the Seva Institute and the upcoming retreats.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's our time today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Angel Shannon. And don't forget, you can find her at Angel V, as in Victor V, Shannon.com. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you.
You all spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.